Alright. Hello, our loyal listeners. Welcome to episode 2 of The End of Everything, a weekly podcast where we explore the latest technology and trends from the perspective of two digital artists, that's us, attempting to make a small business that can both keep us fed and also allow us to mold these technologies into something of value for people, ideally for money, and lots of it. But I'm Ben.
And I'm Euan.
And today we're asking the question, is this the end of good movies?
Yeah.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It's something that, not that you can see us or anything like that, but we are thoroughbred nerds.
Yeah.
Have been for most of our lives.
Yeah.
So this is a topic that we debate pretty much every week.
Yeah, every time we watch a new movie, sure.
Yeah, for at least a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So finally you could get to hear a little bit of that endless argument that we constantly harp on about. But we thought today that we'd kind of structure this podcast in sort of 3 categories. So we're talking a little bit about the industry itself, what's happening, why movies are going the way it's going, talk a little bit about the audience, so why ourselves, why are we responding to movies like this, perhaps it's something in us that has changed as an audience, and then also where the future of cinema or the future of good films are going. But yeah, we thought we'd bring up this topic because we generally notice that films are bad.
Yeah, it's just like the constant disappointment when you go and watch even the big blockbusters, which, you kind of know are going to be awful, but they're just sort of next level awful. I think, the most recent one that I've gone and seen was the new Godzilla. Hopefully that's not offending too many people, but I love trashy films. I love terrible films. And like the old Godzilla, the early 2000s Godzilla, still pretty terrible, but I loved it. And I would love it today. But this new one is just like, oh man.
Well, that's it. You get all excited to go to just a bad movie as like a Transformers or a Fast and the Furious. It's like, I just want something mindless, action-packed that, with a loose story to string along with. And still you're disappointed.
Yeah.
You just come away like, God, that was awful. Why did I go to that?
Yeah.
And you're just angry at yourself.
Oh,
and then
man.
Somehow you just forget that
And
a
go to
couple of
the
weeks
next
later
one.
and go to the next one.
Yeah.
And the sequel. And, the whole franchise. So I suppose we're coming at this with a lot of emotion. As you can see, we're very emotionally charged when it comes to this. But first, let's talk a little bit about the industry.
Yeah.
So what's happening in the industry and why this has happened over what seems to be the last 10 years, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll go into that a little bit. And I think one of the most important things to kind of lead off with is it's money that's driving these changes.
Yeah.
It's the big studios and the theaters needing more money, or they're finding the best angle. It's not a big supervillain behind the scenes who's just maniacally trying to ruin everyone's entertainment.
Yeah.
Which I
Mickey
strongly
Mouse.
suspected. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
So money is driving all these changes.
Yeah, for sure. I was reading about, people want to know that their investment in the film is going to be, it's going to reward them with more money. And obviously when they invest in sequels, there's a lot higher chance that people are going to turn up because of the fact of the success of the name. So an example of that is like Jumanji, the most recent Jumanji, which they're also doing a second one soon. The trailer came out yesterday. But, great film, original Jumanji. And the new one, just not good, obviously, but whatever, semi-entertaining, but super successful.
Right.
Because, it wasn't a good film, it wasn't directed necessarily all that well, but, the studio's just this is a bankable name, let's just make it. And then, it's just successful, so I think...
It's the risk factor, isn't it? So
yeah.
It's we're giving out all this money to this director and this studio or production to essentially make this film, and we want to have the highest guarantee that we're going to make our profit on this.
It's not art. Some films are trying to art house films and Tarantino films or whatever. Arguably, it's he's trying to say something in what he's doing, but I feel with a film like Jumanji, really it's a commoditization of it. You know what I mean? It is just money in, money out sort of scenario, really, and whatever garbage is in between that result
almost doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And people turn up. I mean, I watched it.
Well, yes, you did. But yeah, so I guess that's the general consensus these days, is that franchises are the only movies that are making money. Franchises being, I mean, the big ones, of course, is like the Marvel franchise.
Yeah, well, actually, I was looking at like the top 10 highest grossing films ever, and number 1, Avatar, so that's not a franchise, but then Avengers.
Yep.
Number 4, Star Wars: Force Awakens. 5, Avengers again. 6, Jurassic World. Avengers, Fast and Furious, Avengers, and then Black Panther. So all these, like, of the top 10, only 2 of those are original films, and both of them are by the same director.
Wow. Who himself is almost a franchise.
Yeah, so it's like, with numbers like that, you're just like, why wouldn't they do that?
No, absolutely.
It's just so successful.
I mean, they're just like any other company, right? They want to maximize their profits. They're not out for the good of the community to create great content that's going to last ages necessarily.
But I also think that, like, look, they're looking at a top 10 list, for example, like, some of those movies are garbage. But, like, in terms of a blockbuster, like, I think Avengers often ticks the boxes, you know what I mean? Like, they are, say what you will about it, but they're, like, entertaining films, I think. So, I think it's not mutually exclusive that because a film, I don't know, is like a big blockbuster, it's necessarily a terrible film, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely, yeah. And I guess, I mean, all these movies are, of course, blockbusters, and what defines a blockbuster?
Yeah.
And I think that they're the only movies that are really being made these days and that are hitting the cinema are these big action films.
Yeah.
I think all of the ones on those lists are action films, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yep. So I guess we can talk a little bit about what has got us to this point. Why are we in this position where it's only these massive big blockbusters that are coming out? They're the only ones that you're really seeing the big trailers for, and there seems to be very little variety.
Yeah.
And so, we've done a little bit of research, but also just...
speculation.
Speculation, but also arguably 20 years of research, and that, we've seen so many of these films, we've been involved in the film industry so heavily.
Yeah. But I think as well, like, I wouldn't describe myself as like a movie buff or a movie snob.
No.
Really, like, I do like...
Well, you like
bad
Godzilla,
movies.
so...
Yeah, you know? So, I think even for someone with as lower standards as me...
And they are very low. Very
to
low.
be disappointed, it's just like, oh man, you can't even entertain me. I'm so easy to entertain.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's pathetic, studios. You can't even entertain Euan.
But maybe you get it. Maybe it's like with age as well.
Yeah,
maybe your tastes change, which might be part of it as well.
I think we'll go into that a little bit later. But I've so doing a little bit of looking into it. I guess one thing to look into, or one thing to talk about, is like these ancillary markets.
Yeah.
So these other markets, they're other. Oh, well, I don't really know. Ancillary meaning like a offshoot, I think.
Right.
So these are like other avenues for them to get revenue.
Right.
So DVDs was one of it.
Right.
So DVDs was for many years, and most of our childhood, we're like 27, 28 years old.
Yeah.
That was like a huge source of revenue for those guys. It was actually 50% of the film's revenue was made from DVDs, which like blew me away. I didn't really realize it was that high, but a lot of these films were depending on DVD sales to make a profit on the film.
Yeah, no.
So when that started to go away, and people started to pirate films and things like that, that's when all the major studios started playing it safe as far as these big blockbuster films go.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think the other ancillary market we've got here is product placement.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's another place where they can make money by putting the latest Lexus in the Transformers films, or there's that Snakes in a Plane one where they've just got literally mountains of Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
In the background of every shot.
Yeah. I suppose it's not just product placement, but also like what's it called when you make products of the film or whatever. You know,
I like merchandising. Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Because like that's a big part of Marvel and Star Wars, and the two. They like make so much money from that.
And I think the interesting thing about the product placement thing, like Coca-Cola or whatever it might be, those companies, they want to pay, or they want to put their product in the biggest film.
Yeah.
They don't want to be in some little art house indie film that's going to have an audience of 6 at 11 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
They want to be at the prime time biggest film that has the biggest trailer, and it's going to get in front of the most people, and they want to be associated with the biggest film. So, I mean, of course, if those companies want the biggest film, then the studios are going to make the biggest, wildest, most influential, highly marketed film possible. Yeah. To try and capitalize on that sort of that ancillary market.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how much influence like a company that's putting product placement in a film has, or it's just like, write the check and walk away kind of thing.
Who knows? Yeah.
Like, you think it'd be a bit, but you'd think like you say, like a Lexus in a film, like surely they pay like however many millions.
Yep.
But that would just be kind of it. I wonder.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, yeah, it's true. We're not really experts, are we?
No.
So ancillary markets is another big reason. The other reason, which I found really interesting, is the link between the studios and the theatres.
Right.
This is coming from a really good forum I saw on Quora Digest. But the studios such as Universal Pictures, 20th Century Fox, they have quite close relationships with the major theatres or cinemas. And they have a couple of deals going, mainly being the studio earns a higher percentage of their the revenue, or a percentage of
ticket sales.
Yeah, from ticket sales during the initial weeks of the release.
Right. And
then the longer the film is shown at the cinema, the more the theatre gets.
Right.
Or the more the higher the percentage of the cinema.
So it's probably had a real quick turnaround of films.
And exactly. And what this is meaning is that quality isn't important. Because quality pays off when a film is in there for the long game.
Yeah.
Because that's when the reviews come out, and it's like, oh, this is actually a really great film. Oh, you need to come and see this.
Yeah.
If it's only going to be there for 2 weeks, there's no time for anyone to find out about it. That everyone is actually just going based off the trailer.
Like, gut. Oh, yeah. I recognise that.
Oh, I recognise that. And it's just like, oh, it's awful. But by that point, everyone's already seen it.
Yeah.
So all these major studios and stuff are just trying to make the biggest bang.
Yeah.
And then it'll just gutter out like a flame.
Yeah.
They don't really care about quality whatsoever. It's just about that opening weekend.
Yeah, that's
for the most part. So that's when they make most of their money.
Mm.
And on that note, big bangs, big bangs over quality.
Yeah.
And also what they're trying to really address is appealing to foreigners. So appealing to China, appealing to a lot of other foreign markets that they weren't before.
Depending on where you're listening from.
Yeah, true.
You probably have a big market cap in China at the moment. Listen to this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, true. I mean, they could be listening to this in 15 years' time, I suppose. Once it's made it really big.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess what is more translatable than explosions and action?
Yeah.
If you have some sort of art film of I love you so much, it's like, what's he saying? And like this doesn't relate to me in any way. If I was from somewhere,
Well, especially if it's a different culture, like obviously the way that people interact is different in different cultures, but like you say, it's action and stuff is very
explosions easy. Translate really well.
Yeah.
And everyone understands like action and destruction and a really impactful trailer like that. So that means, I guess they're getting more bang for their buck as far as just making action packed.
Yeah, it was like Aquaman did really well overseas.
Yep.
And I think particularly the Chinese market, which you could kind of wouldn't expect really. It
was the same as Venom, I think. Venom did really well in China, and like that's a really funny thing is that if you watch any sort of in the last sort of 5 years, any sort of action movie, the amount of time there's an action scene in Chinatown is crazy. So there's almost always a car chase or a motorbike chase or some sort of like parkour running scene through Chinatown.
Yeah.
And you know, where they're like knocking over market stalls and some poor little Chinese ladies, you know, having to jump off to the side as someone rushes past. Like, so they're always trying to feature Chinatown, make that a feature of the film, and it's always in the trailer.
Yeah.
So it's always saying like, hey, like we are, you know, incorporating Chinese culture into this film. Like, come see it because here's something familiar or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not that familiar.
No.
Like,
yeah, I don't know what. I'm sure that. I mean, I suppose that's like the other point, right? Is that like a lot of films are now being created not on the artistic vision, but like on numbers and statistics. You know.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, does it being set in Chinatown or whatever example like help the narrative and build the story in the world, or does it get 100,000 people more in the cinema? And that's what they care about. And like, it kind of actually. And maybe brings onto that other point where we were saying that a lot of these sort of big titles are getting basically big franchises. Like an example of it was the new Kong, like Kong Skull Island. Being the directors are quite like inexperienced directors generally, in this particular case anyway. And the idea is that because they're inexperienced, that the producers and the production house has a lot of sway over like what. They say, here, this is a great opportunity, you're going to make millions of dollars, here's a huge film, but we're going to be watching you and basically do what we tell you.
Or we're going to guide you through this.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, so they're not, it's not, a director's just there as a name, but it's not really, important. You know, it's not like Steven Spielberg, where it's like what Steven Spielberg wants, he gets.
I mean, that's actually a great point, because like, how often do you see in the trailers and stuff now, it's not actually directed by, it's actually from the producers of. Like, directors actually are having perhaps less of a role or are less important than they used to.
I think there's less super icon. I mean, maybe there's not less. I don't know. There's only a few like directors that come to name where you're like, oh yeah, that's a really well-known director that everyone would know.
Most of those iconic directors are probably from 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And they're still doing movies.
Yeah, probably.
You know?
Peter Jackson. Yeah. James Cameron.
Yep.
I don't know.
Those big dogs. So that's quite interesting. The other thing I've got here is, of course, unsurprising, talent is leaving for TV.
Yeah. So
actors and actresses are making the sort of migration from cinema to television.
Right.
And we've got that with Netflix and various other HBO streaming platforms. It's suddenly it's viewed that TV is no longer the bargain bin solution for visual entertainment. You know, it's actually, oh no, you can make a career out of this and actually maybe get paid more as an actor or whatever it might be. So
get more interesting acting roles and stuff as well.
Sure.
I'm sure. There's a lot more. It's a lot easier to take a risk on a TV show than it is on a movie.
So you're seeing a lot of the talent is actually leaving the film industry and going into television.
Yeah, right.
So it might be actually really hard to grab that talent sometimes because they'll be taken up in shows or whatever it might be. I suppose that's all very doom and gloom as far as everything that's going wrong with the industry and how it's all just turning away from originality and original content and stuff. But I think it's really easy to overlook the other side of that, which is there's just more. There is so much more films, like more content than there's ever been, and in that way, like indie films and art house cinemas and things like that are doing better than they've ever done.
Yeah.
It's just that there's more content, so it's kind of what's the word? It's like
oversaturated, I guess.
Yeah, oversaturated. So you don't really hear about them so much. But when you think about it, like, I mean, how many here in Wellington? We've got quite a few art house cinemas.
Yeah, and actually, like that's the thing. Is like it's easy for us to sort of slag off all the big movies which suck, but at the same time, like there's plenty of good options that we probably could be watching. The indie art house films that are really great. You know.
Oh no, absolutely, and it's like whenever I naturally don't gravitate towards intelligent films. Like I usually just don't have the energy for it, but whenever I see it, it's like, oh man, this is great. This is so, like, the writing is so well done. Like the characters are amazing. Like,
so maybe the problem is just that we have really piss poor taste.
We should really kind of reflect on that a little bit, maybe. No, there's no doubt that there are some incredible films out there.
Yeah.
And it makes you really appreciate it when you see one come along.
Yeah.
But on that note, one film that we've really liked in the last few years is Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And how well did that do at the cinema?
Yeah, it was on the list of biggest bombs in terms of, I don't think it broke even.
Yep.
In terms of its cost to how much it made in the cinema. I mean, maybe it will become a cult, I think the original Blade Runner wasn't very successful in the cinema, I thought. And it eventually, and same with 2001 Space Odyssey wasn't successful until it became a cult classic. But yeah, I think that is super interesting that we loved that film and it did terrible. But it was very different.
Oh, it was, dare I say it, original.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly well done, but I think that it really speaks to what's happening here, which is they do not care about quality.
Yeah.
And quality sometimes means boring.
But do you mean they as in the producers or they as in the audience? Because it really is, the audience doesn't care.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And yeah, I mean that's it too. Like it's not just the studio's fault for not making give us original content, please. Like, no, here's some action tripe. Obviously this is what audiences are responding to.
Yeah.
And it's statistically proven that audience are more responsive to franchises and things that have multiple sequels now, where they never used to be.
Well, it's as well, when you watch an old film. And this is all just technology or whatever, but the average length of a shot when you watch a film from the Western, it's every 5 seconds or 10 seconds there's a cut. But now it's every half a second or 2 seconds there's a cut. Yeah. And you're watching, you're just this is so boring.
Yeah.
But
so long.
But I think that actually probably brings us on to our next point. It's us as an audience, we just demand.
Yeah.
It's just constant feedback, content,
And that's it, yeah. And it's so easy to blame these studios, but they are just responding to us as an audience.
Yeah.
They're just responding to the changes there. So I thought this is a really, it's a pretty good segue into our talking about the audience now, us as viewers. How have we changed over the years? And I thought this was a really sort of interesting angle to take, because it's something we perhaps don't think about immediately when we think about why are movies just so awful now.
Yeah.
And I think I've read a couple of things about it, and one of potentially one of these reasons might just be our age. And I mean, I guess taking it from my point of view, I'm 27, and I think when I think about those things, I think they don't make movies like they did 15 years ago. All these amazing movies that were out when I was growing up, where are those now? They're so much better written, and everything's just gone to shit. And I guess what they're saying with this is actually, those are just all the films that you were seeing during your influential years.
Yeah.
These are the films you grew up with. These are the films that made you form opinions about things in your life, and I bet you grew up alongside us.
Well, I mean, that's Disney's rebooting all their films now that are all, a lot of them are even older than when we were young.
Yep.
But a lot of them are films from, Lion King coming out soon. That was released when I was 5 or something. So that was it's such an influential film for me in my childhood. It was my favourite film.
Yep. And
now they're redoing it. So obviously they're trying to build on that nostalgia of I love Lion King, I've got to go watch it, and I'll probably see it in the cinema, but I can almost 100% guaranteed I'm not going to like it as much as I did the original. But why would I? Because it's a film about some lions. When you're 7, it's really cool, but when you're 27, you probably want something with a little bit more depth there.
Yeah, so I mean, they're obviously, I think nostalgia is a great word for it. They're obviously just trying to capitalise on that a lot. But I mean, I think if it was the exact same movie but called The Tiger Prince instead, I don't think anyone would see it.
No. The Andy Serkis Mowgli film.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if everyone's seen that. It's on Netflix, and it's because they released the remake of Jungle Book a year or two ago. It was really good, and that's what's like spurred on all this Disney remakes. But Andy Serkis made like a Mowgli one, which is sort of anyway garbage. As much as I love Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
Great at Gollum, but maybe not so good at directing it.
But yeah, so I mean, it's a statistical fact that music tastes solidify between the ages of 14 and 24.
Oh really?
Yep. So like that's when we start to develop our own sense of self, our own individuality, what our likes are, and who we are as people, And I think like our tastes as far as pop culture goes is very much in that same sort of era, And I think like when you think about your favorite films or most influential films, more than likely they'll be somewhere in that bracket. So I think that's like a really big factor for those kind of things. The other thing is it's that first time experience. So I mean, do you remember the first time you saw The Matrix?
Yeah, but I think actually probably more is actually Avatar. I remember the one that I was like, this is mint.
Yeah,
and I watched it in the cinema like 3 times. Or even the first Transformers.
Yeah,
Actually, just like
I saw that like 4 times.
Yeah, this is great. This is perfect. And
I think like this was almost that first time we saw that kind of special effect.
Yeah,
that was the first time we saw transforming robots smashing around in the sea. Like, whoa, and it was an experience that until then we had never experienced.
Yeah,
it was like a new horizon for us, And I think that's pathetic on one level, but on another, like that's really hard to compete with for any other film trying to do that beyond that point.
Yeah,
but I think the same also goes for your first seeing the first tidal wave. Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's almost like the first.
2012.
Yeah, well, I mean, but Day After Tomorrow was like the first apocalyptic movie of the big CG apocalyptic movie of that scale, right?
I don't know. What about that one about the meteor hitting?
Oh, Deep Impact and stuff like that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a very good point. But I suppose
it's pretty average looking back at it.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, I guess that is a movie that hinged on CG destruction on a mass scale.
Original Independence Day with Will Smith.
Yeah,
that was such a good film.
I've watched it so many times.
And actually the new one, like that's one of those ones where it's so bad, but just because it's Independence Day and it's got what's his name in it, Jeff Goldblum, I'm just like, that's alright. I forgive.
You're a commoner. You're so easily suck it in. I mean, Euan is just the perfect sort of example or the archetype of the general population. Can't believe I've made a business with you. Okay, and I suppose another thing, speaking to the how we've changed as an audience, is the rose-tinted glasses. And what we're actually doing when we're thinking about these movies is that we are comparing today's movies with the best movies of our childhood.
Yeah.
So we're thinking, oh god, what's coming out? We've Godzilla, and what are some other terrible movies that are coming out at the moment? Men in Black,
New X-Men. I don't know if that's good or not. New Spider-Man.
So I mean, there's a lot of terrible. I mean, but only you have to look at Netflix to like see a lot of terrible movies that are coming out. But what we're doing in our minds is comparing those with the very best our history has to offer.
Yeah.
It's like, going back to Independence Day or like those pivotal films. It's like, movies were made so well back then.
Yeah.
But then I think a really good example is you go back to 1997 and the top grossing movies was Bean, the Mr. Bean movie. Which actually I think is fantastic. Like, I love that movie.
Such a good film.
So good. And what's that horror one? The Last Summer. I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I don't know if I know that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like it's it is. There's a lot of terrible movies in the past. And in general, like movies have got better.
Yeah.
But we just forget all the bad ones.
Yeah. And also, like, I wonder if people, like, we're saying we love Independence Day, but, like,
Yeah.
you know, that's how many years old? Let's say it's 15 years old. I'm not sure how old it is exactly. But people who are 15 years older than us, if they were watching it back then, they were like, this is garbage.
Oh, yeah.
They probably would think the same thing, you know what I mean?
No, you're probably exactly right, yeah. So I think that's kind of interesting, because I guess you compare the 1997 and you... with being in like I know what you did last summer to 20 years later 2017, which was Thor Ragnarok and Ladybug.
Yeah,
it's like, well, actually they're pretty good movies. Okay, that's cool. So it's we're not surrounded by rubbish films like we think we are.
I think you're probably right. Like it goes back to the statement you were saying about there's just more stuff, so it's easy to pick out like, oh, this is terrible. But like,
there's still some diamonds in the rough.
There probably was only 5 good movies ever made. Like in 1997, there's probably 5 good films in a year, and now there's probably like 20. You know. But there's also 80 shite ones.
So like, it's easy to think how terrible movies are.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you have anything about the audience, or should we move on?
No, move on.
Move on. Cool. Yeah, so I guess now we want to kind of talk about is where are movies going? You know, the future of film. Where is it heading? And is cinema gonna die? Is this are we seeing the end of an era?
Yeah.
And I think you've done like a little bit of looking into this, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think the obvious one to go to is Netflix. I mean, it's obviously become a big player in the last 5 or 10 years in the world of film. So I think I mean, Netflix does a good job of backing up the evidence that all the films are garbage these days, is because, a lot of these original Netflix films, in my opinion, are pretty average. Again, there are some like good ones. But
I mean, that seems a little bit different from 5 years ago, right? Like, I think when I thought Netflix 5 years ago, I'm like, oh wow, all these shows are just great. Like, why all of a sudden are they rubbish?
So basically, Disney, I don't know if many people know this, but Disney owns a lot of these sort of production houses and studios. So a list of a few of the big ones is Pixar, Lucasfilms, Marvel, 20th Century Fox, and Hulu, which is a streaming service that's more popular in America. I don't know, we don't really have much here. But so Disney is planning, I think this year, to release a streaming service. So
is it just like Netflix?
Like Netflix, but like super Netflix, because they own so much. They also own ESPN, so they can do sports. They can do all sorts of crazy things because they're such a, monopoly, quotation marks.
Where do I sign up?
So like, they're basically stripping a lot of content from platforms such as Netflix that used to have the rights to show them, but now they don't. So that's... And anyway, I had like a chart that shows what people are actually watching on Netflix, and this is for TV shows, not films, but the top one is the US Office, Friends second, Parks and Recreation, Grey's Anatomy. They're the top 4, shows that people stream, and it's just like...
None of them are Netflix originals.
None of them are Netflix originals, none of them are even recent. Like, they're all just nostalgia shows, really. And I think the problem is that Netflix is just trying to produce content at such a rate because it's just getting stripped away from it, and without content, their business model is, gone to shit, basically, because they can't, unless you have anything good to watch, then, no one's going to sign up to your streaming service. So I think that's pretty interesting, really.
So they're almost just like flooding their service with shows. So like they're going to be the most full.
Well, I think probably they do want content, but I think it's probably really hard to produce good stuff. So like, if you've just got a big stack of cash, and then you're like, we need to find directors and teams of people to produce films and films to back. I'm sure they're just like, come in. I mean, again, wild speculation. But some of the films that are produced, you're just like, oh, really? Is that the best idea you can come up with? But probably it's just like, just make it. Is
it kind of like a shotgun effect? Like they're just trying to cover a whole lot of territories. Like, you have some money, and just hopefully something good comes out of the scene.
Exactly. And good things do come out of the scene. Like Stranger Things. I mean, again, I don't know about the last season. I mean, it's all right. Let's see about the third one.
Sure.
But first season, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people turn up to Netflix for that show. So I think
I mean, yeah, there's undoubtedly some amazing shows coming out of it, and they do kind of rise to the top amongst the boiling mass of
averageness,
tripe. And
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I think about what I watch on Netflix, and mainly it's old shows. You know, things that.
Yeah, you're watching Skins the other day.
And like, you know, The Office. Yeah, like I watch The Office. You know, stuff like that. Peep Show is one of my favourite shows. Like, you know, but they're all just like produced by BBC or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
and so they're all just going to be stripped away as soon as.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if those specific ones are? But you know, a lot of them are.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, is this... Yeah, I mean, just talking a little bit more, I suppose, on the audience thing. Like, what is our obsession with nostalgia? Like, why are we... I mean, it's obviously why we're into franchises and reboots and things like this. Like, why are we constantly trying to recapture these old experiences that we've had? It's just like, I've seen something like that before and I want to feel that again.
Or maybe it's just that, like, you don't have time to be...
original.
Or like disappointed, you know, like when you're sitting down to watch something, you're just like, I want this to be something that I know is good. And
so are we exactly like the studios in that we our time is precious and it's like we want a safe bet?
Yeah.
So if we were going to see something, I mean, maybe this is
I think that was probably kind of it.
Maybe like as we just have less and less time, we don't want to take a risk on watching something that's going to waste 2 hours of our life.
Yeah.
And just like going to cinema, it's like, this thing could be awful or it could be fantastic, or I could go to Avengers, which I know which would be on one side of average.
Yeah.
And you know,
pretty alright.
Pretty alright.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's just what it is at the moment, you know. And like the amazing films like Blade Runner, people just don't have time for it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think. Yeah, the other note that I had for sort of in terms of like not far future projection, but. So, I don't know if people are aware of this, but Netflix, basically, depending on what you watch, it will show you different slides to represent your films. So, they'll choose different images.
So, like that big banner that always starts off with the trailer or whatever it is.
That'll be different depending on what other things you've watched. So, and also the trailer they show you will be edited differently. So, like, they use...
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
wow.
they use your... Whatever, like, what you like to try and entice you to watch it.
Yeah, okay.
So like when I watch it like with my girlfriend, like she'll have a whole cast of different things, like different images for the same shows.
Yep.
Which is quite interesting. But I think this is probably only going to increase as my theory, and you know, is that as things like AI and machine learning and stuff like that becomes, you know, easier to do and more widespread, I see a world where, you know, content will be made specifically for each person.
I mean, that's happening more and more just everywhere around us, right? Like AI and machine learning is just becoming a part of everything.
Yeah, and so, you know, obviously as our data is just being constantly mined, like you could imagine it, you know, I'm sure YouTube definitely does it a lot as well, you know, algorithms to show you what you want to see, that you could imagine that you could potentially make content which, I mean, maybe it's already been done. But anyway, I was looking at an article of you know, there's already algorithms that can write articles about whatever just by itself.
Yep.
So like, and there are people who've created it. It's OpenAI, which is a company in America that develops AI software, and they've decided like not to release it to the public because they think it's too too easy to be used in a malicious way.
Yep.
Because like, you know, with all the fake news and all that sort of stuff, if you just have AI or computers that can just generate content that's basically indistinguishable from like content that's created by like people, then like there's obviously a lot of use, like a lot of ways you can misuse that.
Oh, absolutely. But,
yeah, I think it's not too far to believe that you've been in the future you would watch content that's literally just generated for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So meaning a film like I don't know, like Transformers or something could come out and it's almost like a Goosebumps pick a path. And that like the algorithm's picking a path for you based on what you want or what is catered to you. So basically everyone's getting the perfect story that they want based on what they've liked on YouTube or gone to see in the past.
Exactly.
So you're seeing, I guess, like these films which are these big sort of algorithmic webs which anyone can get a different experience out of.
And I think it will like start, I mean, I swear I heard that you could. There was an algorithm that you feed like writing. Say like you give the algorithm all of like the Harry Potter books, and then it would write a new Harry Potter book. With with a completely new storyline, but with all the same characters and stuff, just in a different story. So you can imagine.
Have you read any of those?
I haven't. Some of them are real bad though.
They are so like they're amazing. Like it's just like like Hermione falling off a roof and turning Hagrid into like some sort of inanimate object and things like that. It's just like amazing.
But like you can imagine a world where that is perfected or done well, that you're just like, I'm just going to read Harry Potter forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's it. Like, okay, this is the kind of the kind of thing you're like, yeah, we could just whip up another one for you.
Yeah, and like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
For sure. And like, where does what's the place of an artist or like and film as an art? Like, it's definitely not an art at that point.
No,
you know what I mean? Is it?
Well, that's another discussion. The end of art.
Yeah, or the end of like people that do code artists, like...
Yeah, is it just a different form of artistry?
Yeah.
Oh, that's turning into a different discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonably good overview. But
that's pretty interesting. I think we're going to put like all of our sort of notes and stuff in a link on our website, so you can sort of see where we've got our information from, if that's interesting to you.
Yep. So we'll just put that all in links on our website. Check it out if you want more details, and I guess tune in next week. Yeah. See ya.